G'day everyone, it's James Davis from the Pax8 Academy again, and I'm joined by Stephen from CrewHu. How you going, mate?
Doing great. Doing great, James.
You've got a bit of an accent. Where in this wide world are you located?
I'm originally from New York, but now I live in Boca Raton, Florida.
Very similar climates to the tropical Hobart down here near Antarctica, so we've got something in common.
Yeah. And fun fact: lots of people from New York end up in Boca Raton, Florida. They sometimes call it the sixth borough of New York City. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you on because we're going to talk about customer experience, measuring satisfaction of our clients and our employees. And I think what better question to dive in with is we keep hearing the term customer experience, but what actually is it? What does it actually mean?
Yeah, customer experience. I would say there's lots of meanings, but I believe to make it as simple as possible, it's to deliver predictable and consistent service that your customer is expecting. And things are going to go right and things are going to go wrong. But if they expect a certain level of service when things go wrong and you deliver that, you usually end up, building a stronger relationship than if nothing ever went wrong at all.
That's a really eloquent way of putting it. And you've triggered my brain of wanting to know, well, what do we need to set up to be able to deliver customer experience deliberately?
Yeah, so it's well, first of all, a lot of people, you hear the term CSAT in the industry a lot, which means customer satisfaction. And a lot of people get really wrapped up, right, in the score. Oh, I got 100% CSAT. I have a 98% CSAT. For me, the score is less important than the quantity of feedback that you're getting. And if you're starting out, or even if you have a program and you're not getting enough feedback, the one thing you really want to focus on is the quantity. Why am I not getting a lot of feedback from my clients? Is it my template? Is it not optimized? Is it because when they give us feedback, we don't have a process to do anything with it? And they start to say, hey, why am I wasting my time leaving feedback when we don't hear back from the vendor, right? So it's really focusing on quantity and also focusing on a process in your customer experience program, and getting your whole team involved in it, and letting them know how important it is to your company.
You make me so happy. I always feel like I'm the only one saying that it's actually about the quantity of feedback. I've seen a lot of people get super excited that like you said, they're getting 95 CSAT scores, but they've had 2 responses.
Yeah,
like that quantity is so important. So how do you drive that people to actually provide feedback?
Well, we when we work with our clients, we work with optimizing their template. We understand what what a good template is and what a template is that doesn't work well. But I would say if you want to take something away right now, right this second, you want to put the survey on the splash page. You don't want to have to scroll, right? So however you're delivering your feedback mechanism right now, make sure it's very clear that they can leave feedback right from that splash page.
That's some very useful advice. And how important is it? You mentioned before that getting the team to understand the importance of gathering feedback. What does that sort of look like? What are you trying to make them aware of, and what sort of behaviors do you want them to exhibit to show that they understand that the feedback's important?
Well, we want them to understand. First of all, you want to set expectations and let them know negative feedback's not bad, right? And I say this a lot. Positive feedback's good. Negative feedback's good. What's not good is no feedback at all. When I see a customer that would give me a negative feedback or one of our clients negative feedback, my first response is they care about us. They want us to do better. They're letting us know what's not working. It's those that you never hear from. They never leave feedback. It's hard to get them on, quarterly review calls. Those are the people that don't really understand your value yet. They think of you as an expense line on the income statement next to electric or anything else that you can't control. You're just a cost. You're not an investment yet. And those are the clients. Of course, if they're your right client, they may not be your right client, and you may want to get rid of them. But if they are a right client, you want to proactively work with them so they're looking at your business as an investment and not as an expense.
Well, what are the touch points that we want to get feedback off?
Yeah. So there's lots of touch points, especially in the technology industry. So if you're an ITSP or an MSP or a cloud provider, you're offering services on a daily basis to your end user customers. You may use a PSA like ConnectWise Manage or Datto's Autotask or Halo or one of the other ones. And whenever someone replies from that ticket, you should ask for feedback, not as a separate email. Not as a separate email that may seem spammy, but on that response to the ticket, as simple as how is my reply? And the importance of that is you want to understand when things are going, wrong, so you can fix them before they go sideways. Another place to do it is on the ticket completion. And I want to differentiate between the ticket completion and the ticket close. Ticket completes first, and then there's a 3-day window, and then it closes. And so, we've run into numerous companies waiting for the close. By the time they get a survey, they're going to forget what happened. The conversion rate is definitely going to go down drastically. So you want to have it on the completion. So once it's completed, you ask them, how did we do on the ticket? How was our service? And your conversion rate will go up that way. There's a few other ones that we like. The project survey. So on a project milestone, send something out on a template, on a signature. So not everybody is in the ticketing platforms. So you may want to put it on your Outlook signature. So people from sales or other parts of the company could also receive feedback. It's not only for the help desk. And we're talking about transactions now, and CSAT is transactional. Your customer satisfaction score is based on a transaction, based on a ticket, sort of like if you went to the restaurant, how is your meal? Not what you thought about the restaurant in general, but how is this specific meal? And you want to do the same thing with your company. You may be answering tickets, your CSAT may be very, very high, but maybe your product set or where your company is going is not a fit for your actual customer. So you want to ask them, you want to use a Net Promoter Score survey, which is relational, which goes out once every 3 to 4 months. I would say 3 to 6 months, depending on your customer set. And you ask them, on a score of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to a colleague or friend? And if they're a promoter, what you're doing fits with what they need. And if you get a lower score, there's opportunities to improve. There may be a risk of churn, maybe not today, but down the line. So there's time. So what could I do differently in my business? And your customers are such a great source of information to help you build your product. But not only that, to differentiate your product, to carve out your own niche in the market.
Off the back of all of that information, the NPS being relational, the CSAT score being transactional, you explain quite well around how NPS works. How does CSAT typically work? How are we getting that feedback?
So CSAT's tied to the ticket, tied to the transaction. So that will go out on a ticket template email when there's a reply in a ticket or when the ticket's closed. And you're able to get a good score, a neutral score, or a negative score. And you're able to score yourself from that. When you're doing that, I don't recommend just looking at the score like we spoke about in the beginning of our conversation, but look at the quantity of the tickets that you're closing compared to the quantity of the feedback that you're getting. That's your conversion rate, and you want to improve your conversion rate over time, which is I think a big success factor for a customer experience program.
What sort of, if we talk some numbers, you're quite experienced, you've seen a lot of people do this. What's sort of the industry average of the response rates, and what are the sort of the high performers getting? What does good look like?
Well, on the low end, right, on the very, very low end, people are getting 2%, 3% of the tickets that are customer facing. We're not talking about, network operations that don't touch end users. We're just talking about end users. If you're between 10 and 20%, you're doing okay. You could call it met. If you're above 20%, you're doing really nicely. And then there's some that are above, 30% and even 40%. Now, conversion rate, you need to understand there's some providers that measure conversion rate where they're only counting the tickets that are open, which gives you an inflated conversion rate. And what you need to do is create a conversion rate that counts all the tickets that you sent the survey on. So if you sent the survey on 100 tickets and you got 20 responses back, that's essentially 20%. But now let's say you sent 100, 50 people opened the survey, right? But only 25 answered the survey. Now you have a conversion rate of 25. In that case, it would be 50% when it was really 25%. So you want to make sure you're measuring the conversion rate correctly.
Super critical to understand those numbers. And I'm curious to understand how are the CSAT scores and NPS scores calculated, and what does the sort of industry average and what does good look like for them as well?
Got it. So you take say you have 100 surveys. Say 90 of them were positive. Say 5% were negative, and 5% were neutral. You don't count the neutral, but you take the positive 90%, subtract it by the negative 5%, and it's essentially an 85% CSAT score. So the neutrals do affect your score, but the formula is positive minus negatives equals CSAT. And NPS is pretty much done the same way. And in the ITSP market, the CSAT's typically very high. If you're on the lower third, you're at 92% or so CSAT. So when you might think, oh, I got a great score. Actually, in this space, there's a lot of improvement to be made, on a 92% score, because that's the business. The business is, serving the customer on the computer problems and backup problems and security problems.
Okay. Why It does seem very high. Like, do you think that comes down to the general response rates that we get? It's more people are likely to give positive feedback on an anonymous survey than they would just ring up and complain that they're not being serviced fast enough? Or do you have any?
It's I think that it has a little bit to do with it. People do not like to give negative feedback. They like to give positive feedback. So a lot of people that are unhappy with the service but just don't care, they don't say anything. And that's why it's really important to have the analytics that show which customers are not, talking to you. Those are the customers that the BCIOs and the account managers should be focusing on and should be reaching out to proactively to improve the relationship. Now, it's funny that you mentioned, that specific point, because we talk a lot about what's being said, very easy to see, but also what's not being said, right? So we actually have analytics that we focus on for our clients that you're able to see, oh, you have a 98% CSAT, but only 20% of that is positive and focused on response time, right? So we could actually see that they're not mentioning response time as a reason why you guys are delivering great CSAT, and there's a response time problem. Now, typically, customers will leave IT providers for response time. That is the number one reason why they leave. Talking to some of our clients that use their CSAT program to sell and grow their business, use that response time statistic to show them in their RFPs, in their reports. So they're not only using their customer satisfaction program to improve their customer satisfaction, they're using it to promote their business and show how they actually manage it. So they could differentiate themselves from others out there and stand out from a very crowded space.
That's really interesting. So if they're doing that, how are they using that sort of CSAT score internally to drive behaviors?
Yeah, so we have these things on our surveys called tags, and like effort to resolve. Like, if you ever heard of the customer effort score, very important. Resolution time, response time, accuracy, knowledge, and so a lot of people using other surveys, could see that, oh, we have a 98% CSAT. Look at all the green faces. There's only one or two reds. We're doing great. But there's a lot of other data points that you're missing there, because a lot of people do not like to fill in text feedback. So when they're filling out the positive, they could also press, oh, it was because of response time. Oh, it was because of effort to resolve. And you could actually see the reasons why they're giving positive feedback. And when they don't mention things, you could actually pull out analytics that show where you can improve. And if you could improve your CSAT, you'll be able to use that not only to retain your clients, but to take that information, put it in a proposal, and say, hey, this is what our response time looks like over the course of 1,000 pieces of feedback. If you know this, response time is our highest rated and most popular category that they give us feedback on. How's the response time now with your current provider? And they may say, oh, it's not great. This is why we're looking. And then they focus on that piece, and it helps them win business.
It's really interesting, like that. putting more data to positive, because we do probably use these sort of mechanisms to validate our assumptions. And I think we need to challenge our assumptions, either prove that it's right or prove that it's wrong, and then be able to adjust from that. So at a certain point, if we're just getting the positive feedback and we're not really looking into it, is there any point even having it a lot of the time? We've been talking a lot about positive. Let's turn it to the negative. If we're getting negative feedback, what are the best practices that we should be looking at to actually handle that?
Well, negative feedback happens because expectations are misaligned, right? So maybe you fix the computer in an hour. They expected it to be done in a half an hour, but the SLA says 4 hours for this specific type of problem. So that's not really the tech's fault at this point. It's misalignment in communications. Now, there's also customer service. The tech didn't have empathy. The tech talked down to the user. The tech might not have picked up the phone, but used email going back and forth like 10 times, which is causing frustration. Okay, so there's customer service there. That could be fixed with training, right? The expectations could be fixed with better communications. And then there's also the process. Maybe I get my computer delivered to me as a new employee. The checklist has all the software except for one piece of software, but what is critical for me to start my job. I'm going to be frustrated because I can't start without that piece of software. It's not on the checklist. That's a process problem. So first of all, the first thing that you do with negative feedback, understand, right? Is it a misalignment of expectations? Is it a process problem? Is it actually a customer service problem that you have to, deal with the tech, right? And you categorize it, that way, right? And you also, you want to, any piece of feedback that comes in, you want to review it. You want to close it out. You want to have a report that says, I have this many negative pieces of feedback that came through that were not reviewed. As a manager, you could see that. You could go to your team, see what's going on, and have that handled. You could also, there's many ways to do it. Some companies use the actual text to resolve them. Some use a coordinator. Some use the actual service manager. It could also be a service lead. That depends on the organization. And it's also a conversation that we have during onboarding with people. And whether you're using a platform or not, it's something that you have to think about. How are you going to process the feedback? Because if you just start a program and you're not processing it, what's the point? I like to focus on, not only measuring customer satisfaction, but improving it. And, so you measure it, you understand what the bad is, you understand what the good is, and have a process for both. So, for example, the bad, you process it and make sure that if it's something that could happen again, you document it so you have less of these incidences happening. If it's positive, right, you want to, well, what do you do with the positive? Why are you reviewing the positive? It's positive. There's a lot of great information that you could pull out. Number one, you could use it as a testimonial on your website. And lots of people have testimonials on their websites. But most organizations have testimonials without dates because it might have happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And people that see these testimonials really don't give it a lot of credibility unless it is dated and unless it's dated within the past 6 months. So having an automation with your positive ratings floating into your website not only improves SEO, but it improves your credibility with your customers. Customers that would not reach out to you, customers that you will never hear from because they'll come to your website and leave if you don't have the right information on there. that makes you credible, because there's a lot of people that look exactly like you in the IT space, and you need to figure out how to stand out. And so use those positives to stand out. Use the positives to create case studies. Use them to create referrals. There's a lot you could do to help grow your business through the positives. And I don't think that companies spend enough time focusing on the positive, not only to motivate their employees, but to grow their business in general.
That's a really good point. It goes back to that sort of, we just treat it as a validation that things are okay. We can ignore it, rather than actually how do we leverage positivity? How can we grow? How can we become better? How can we attract more people? So it's an amazing point. And you mentioned there a bit around like the employees and how much they've got to do with getting the feedback, and they're the ones that are delivering it. What should we be doing with positive feedback with the employees? Is it something that their job performance is tied on the CSAT score? Do they get rewarded for getting good feedback? Do they get in trouble for getting negative feedback? Like how do we actually use this internally with our employees?
Yeah, there's a, you talk about measuring performance. I mean, yes, you measure performance with it. You can see that. But it's more about celebrating the small wins on a daily basis, right? Generally, and I call this a relationship bank account. Generally, managers will come to their employees, come to their techs, and they'll say, "Oh, what happened here on this ticket? This ticket was not done well. Can you explain yourself?" And they're always coming at the employee. Why this happened? Why do you do it like this? You're not doing it right. And it's, it sort of erodes trust over time. But you could sort of improve the trust, even if you come, and because when things happen and it's not right, you want to hold them accountable. But if it's only negative, they're going to go, "Oh God, James is, there's James, he's coming. Let's hide," and they'll go under the desk, or you'll have these conversations like you have with your teenage kid, and you'll just get one-word answers, and that's not productive at all. And so if you come to them on a daily basis, great job, great job, great job, great job. When it comes time, because there's a lot more positive than negative. They're just, it just is. So if you come to them with the negative after all that, they're like, "Oh, okay." They're more open to listen. They're more open to help solve the problem with you than just yes you. And I think that's magical. That improve, and just little things. Yeah. So our platform actually automates a micro reward every time someone gets a positive rating, for example. And so they get some points, and they can take those points and redeem them for meaningful rewards. And also everybody sees it on the board, and it's sort of, it's motivating. They're little thank yous, right? And I also recommend calling people out on Microsoft Teams for doing great work. It just reinforces that customer experience culture. And you want to just reinforce the positive. And then when it comes time to talk about, this stuff that's not going right, you could talk about it. You could have an open conversation, and you need to talk about it. Accountability is super important as well. So it's not all just positives, but you need to put that in the recipe for everything else to work, or else the employee's not going to be happy. They're only going to have negative experiences at work. They're going to disengage just a little bit, where they're not doing enough to get fired, but they're not doing enough to make you guys stand out. You're just another average company. And when you look at the industry, there's a lot more average than spectacular. So there's a really big opportunity to stand out.
Oh, huge, isn't it? It isn't really, the bar's so low. It's not hard to stand out. And going back to the points that you've been saying around, leveraging this sort of data and making it more visible, it's a leverage point. And I guess that's where my next question out of that is how can we use this sort of feedback when we're interacting with a client as an account manager, as an advisor? What's the best sort of ways to use that in front of the client to have discussions with it as a data point?
Well, there's a few ways. What I hear, this is coming from real experience, real quarterly reviews, where they come in and they're surprised. They're coming in thinking they're doing such a great job. The decision maker goes, "I'm really unhappy with what you guys are doing. Really unhappy." And they're like, well, why? Well, all I'm hearing is about, all these, service issues. I'm not happy with the response time. And if you have no information in front of you, you can't defend that. You have to just listen, shake your head, and then go back and see what happened. Now, if you come in with a report of all the feedback that you got throughout the entire quarter, and most of it is positive, maybe there's that one negative, and that's probably what the decision maker is talking about. There was just one fire, and the negatives stand out a heck of a lot more than the positives. If it's everything's going great. If everything's not, well, what's going on? Now you have my attention, and you could show him or her, hey, we had 300 pieces of feedback. We had these 2 incidences. This is what we did with them. But this is, on the most part, what your team thinks about the work that we're doing. And then the decision maker, the person that you're meeting with, all of a sudden has a different perspective about the service that you're providing. Oh, I didn't realize. So you're using this as a tool to show them the value you're delivering, because sometimes it's really hard to show the value. When everything's working, it's sort of like, I'm paying you guys a lot of money and I don't feel like you guys are doing anything, but you're actually doing a lot. And you're able to showcase that during your QBRs. Now, if there isn't a lot of feedback, that's another conversation. Now, listen, one of the things that we talked about is that there would be open communications between your company and our company. We handled about 300 tickets in the help desk that were opened by your team. We received 10 pieces of feedback over the quarter, and we want to help you. We're here for you. We want to do business with you. We want to be your partner. But if we don't hear back from you, there's not much we could do to improve, and we're all about continuous improvement. So you open up that conversation with them. That adds credibility just by opening that up. If that company cares, they'll wanna help you. If the company doesn't, well, there's another issue, right? But for the most part, I hear you bring up that conversation, you partner with them to get their team to give more feedback on the tickets, and that ends up in higher conversion rates as well.
It's been such a fascinating conversation that we've been having, and there's obviously a lot more nuances, a lot more to go behind this, but we've covered a lot of topics. What do you want people to really walk away from today? What's the major takeaway you want people to walk away from, and what advice would you give as next action step? Either they're not measuring it or they are measuring it, because there is probably 50-50 in the industry that are at that point.
Got it. There's so much opportunity. For the most part, you're dealing in the sea of average, and then there's the guys that stand out. You could stand out so easily in this industry, and you need to focus, I think, on collecting a lot of feedback, right? And doing what we talked about throughout this talk to get even more feedback from your customers. Use a process to process not only the negative feedback but also the positive feedback, and get your team engaged. Celebrate the small wins with your team. Have an engaged team. Don't only focus on measuring the customer satisfaction, but focus on improving it. And in order to do that, you need to have a team engaged. You need to have a team that knows what their customer satisfaction goal is. And, a company that celebrates together, really wins.
It's some awesome wisdom that you shared, and I'd back that up, that it needs to be an embedded part of your business. Just having a CSAT score up on a dashboard, it doesn't generally help. You're pretty much just spending money on a tool and you're not actually utilizing it. Where if you're embedding that practice into manage negative feedback, you're utilizing positive feedback in different ways, you're using it internally and externally, you're going to get value. You're going to get value out of it, and it's only going to help you grow. And especially for owners, we didn't really talk about this, but if you're an owner, as you're becoming less and less in the day-to-day, you don't know what's going on. So you need a mechanism to keep your finger on the pulse and keep oversight, but not have to be feeling like you're in the day-to-day to know what's going on as well. So that visibility internally becomes super critical. It's been an awesome conversation, Stephen. I'm so appreciative of your time and joining me today.
Yeah, it was great talking to you too, James.
Well, I hope to have you on in the future again, and we'll hopefully there's less of a sea of averageness, and we'll see a lot more people standing out.
All right, very good. And it'd be great to pop on over there.
I hopefully come over to the region soon. That'd be awesome.
Very good, man.
Thanks, mate.
All right.